Hello! So, hopefully there's not background noise, but if there is, I'm sorry, there's not much I can do about it. Um, I'm here to rank all of the Final Space episodes. I saw this chart on Twitter from Candy, uh, and it's 3 in the morning, I have no impulse control, and I like to hear myself talk, so I'm going to talk about all of these. Here's my little warning that I have not watched some of these episodes in a hot minute. So if I'm forgetting anything, or if I say something that's a little bit not maybe remembered correctly, that would be why. But I think I remember everything fairly well, so it should be fine. I'm just gonna go in chapter/episode order. I thought about maybe doing it like least favorite to most favorite, but I don't think I have that order set yet, so I can't do that. So let's start off with chapter 1. I think chapter 1 does what it sets out to do fairly well. It's definitely actually my favorite episode of the beginning trio. Not spoiler alert, but it does what it sets out to do. It introduces the story fairly well. I know there was some confusion with some people on the Gary prisoner thing. I did not start on episode 1, so I didn't have that problem. So, coming from somebody who already was fairly familiar with what was happening, because I started on chapter 7 and 8, it was just because it was on Lulu's TV, but it was fine because chapter 8 is what got me to watch the rest of the show. But because of that, I kind of don't have. I've never watched this episode with fresh eyes, brand new person, no idea what's happening. So, if I take that element out, I think the episode does what it needs to. It establishes everything. It makes Gary a character you want to root for, with the whole mooncake thing and the Hugh, that mooncake Hugh Gary interaction, where Gary's just basically lightful Hugh, to save Mooncake. I think that's a really good moment, and Gary just saying fuck it and using the jets to try to save himself and Mooncake. I think that's all really well handled. So this gets a solid B tier. Might go up, might go down. I think it might stay in B because it doesn't blow me out of the water, but it does what it needs to. I do not think the same thing can be said for chapter 2. I don't hate chapter 2. I think Avocado pretty much single-handedly saved me from hating it, but they sort of made me not Gary was fine in chapter 1. I think they established him really well. And then chapter 2 happens, and I kind of want to strangle him. He's really obnoxious. I don't know, the humor, because a lot of the humor in this kind of relied on Gary, and vice versa. It was a very interconnected thing where Gary's actions were meant to be the humor, but the humor didn't land for me very well in this episode, and that meant that the entire episode pretty much did not land well for me. Gary's just obnoxious. And God, I didn't like his screaming. It felt like Olin kind of forgot he wasn't a YouTuber for a second there. This episode felt very YouTubey to me for whatever reason. Like I said, Avocado I think saves this from being a D tier. I think it's C for him alone, but I didn't really like this episode. And so maybe it'll go down as I get to better episodes. We'll see, but we'll stick it at C for now. Chapter 3. I couldn't remember what happened in Chapter 3 when I first saw this list. I had to go refresh myself a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it sure was an episode. Like I said, the fact that I genuinely could not remember which episode this was when I saw it, definitely said something, I think, about the overall impressions that it left on me. But I don't think I was... I didn't hate it. I think it's another chapter 2 situation in which Gary's definitely a little bit more on the obnoxious side. Funnily enough, I think it's Mooncake this time that saves this one from a D tier, because I basically love it anytime Mooncake gets the spotlight for a while. He's a very interesting character to follow. So I think this is going to go in C tier right beside Chapter 2. I think it's a little better than Chapter 2, despite the fact that I couldn't actually remember what it was. Because I remembered Chapter 2 for the wrong reasons. I remembered Chapter 3 for... I didn't remember Chapter 3. That was my whole point. I'm sorry, it's 3 in the morning. Chapter 4, on the other hand, whew, spicy. I don't think I fully appreciated Chapter 4 until I sat back for a while, and I had been talking with a friend, and he had been like, yeah, so this is really like when this show kicked off. This is when we really start to get that Gary development. And I realized looking back that he was correct. And as anybody who knows me might know, I am a whore for Team Gary content. Anything to do with Gary's backstory, I love. So because of that, Chapter 4 is Gary backstory. It's Gary having a panic attack staring at the sun. Highly relatable. If I remember correctly, this was before there was really any time for Gary to act super weird to Quinn. So it was just Quinn and Avocado kind of going at it on the ship when the ship gets taken over. I'm fairly certain that was this episode. Yeah, it was, because Gary went out to fix the ship while everything was going wrong. And I think Kevin... I don't like Kevin very much, but I think him saving the day was a really nice touch. So, I don't know if it should go in A tier or S tier. It definitely deserves to be in one of the two. It's either high A tier or low S tier. I don't know. I don't know where to put it. You know what? We're gonna put it in low S tier. I mean, it's the only thing in S tier, but I can tell you it's gonna be low S tier if it doesn't get bumped down. But, excellent episode. Good Gary establishing. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's very interesting. Chapter 5, on the other hand, this was also another one I couldn't remember. The first second one I looked, I was like, what happened in Chapter 5? And I remembered what happened in the next episode, and that's what clued me in. I like Quinn a lot. Gary is once again really obnoxious in this episode, so that drags it down. But I like Quinn a lot. Actually, if I'm being completely fair, Quinn is also a little bit obnoxious in this episode. Oh no. If I remember correctly, their chemistry in this episode is, like, not good. And I know that's the point, but it's just kind of secondhand embarrassing to watch. And admittedly, do I blame Quinn for not wanting to work with the incel? No. But, like, also, Quinn's just whole teamwork spiel. I don't know, I know that was kind of, like, the message was, like, a team squad sticks together, and I really like that line that comes at the end, about, like, we're team. I don't know if this is the episode that Team Squad gets coined or if it's Chapter 7. I think this is the Team Squad coining episode. But, yeah, it's just really okay. We'll put it at high C tier. Because Quinn being in it alone saves it from Chapter 2, Chapter 3. But it has kind of those Chapter 2 levels of Gary not funniness. It does have a few funny lines in there, though. Once again, it's Avocado, which makes the next episode all the worse. Chapter 6. I'm actually really disappointed I didn't go into this one blind. I mean, it was for the best, because I think if I hadn't watched Chapter 8 before I started this, I probably would not have watched... I've said this before, and maybe I should have said this back when I was on, like, Chapter 2, Chapter 3. If I had not started on Chapter 7, Chapter 8, I would have dropped the show during the first few episodes, I think. So, because like I said, I don't... You know what? I think I'm going to drop Chapter 2 down the D tier actually for that alone, because I would have dropped the show during Chapter 2 if I hadn't already known what comes. But because of that, I already knew what happened in Chapter 6 more or less. But, like, God, what a gut punch if you didn't know. You were watching this episode, or week to week, and Avocado dies. And Avocado is straight up one of the most charismatic characters in this entire show. It's the first time we meet Little Kato. The Gary Quinn stuff gets a fairly okay resolution in this. I think they handled it as well as they could have, and I have thoughts on the whole Gary Quinn thing, but I think it can basically be summed up to Gary was alone on a ship for 5 years. He just kind of fixated on the last woman he saw before getting thrown in there, because in order to move on from somebody, you need a support system. You need space, which he did have space. But you need like a support system, and you need distractions and things that he didn't have. So he just fixated on the last thing he'd seen before he went there. I'm a little bit off topic now. My point was that I think they handled this fairly well, but obviously the Avocado Gary stuff is the peak of the episode, and then the ending is jaw-dropping, especially if you don't know what's coming. So, highest here. Chapter 7. I have a soft spot for this episode because it's the first episode I watched. Watched it immediately after the Steven Universe Future finale, which not to spit more hot takes, but I didn't like it. So I went off in disappointment immediately into this, which I ended up really liking. I think it's a cute episode. I think it's Gary being an idiot, but it's not Gary being an annoying idiot. It's just him trying to do the right thing and fucking up, and I respect that a lot. Little Kato was great. Little Kato was always great. We meet Nightfall here. Nightfall's pretty chill. Yeah, I think this is just a solid episode. I'm gonna put it in high B tier. I want to put it a little bit higher than that, but I cannot. In my heart, I don't think it qualifies as an A tier because I think Chapter 4 qualifies as an A tier. I think that's where I'm at. Chapter 8 is, like I said, the episode that got me to stick with the show. I adore this episode so much. The jokes land here. Bolo gets introduced, and as some people may know, I love Bolo also. He's just a very fun character. He's great. We get a little bit of Mooncake lore, which I appreciate. Unfortunately, no Hugh, who is the best character in season 1, but the big thing for me is the John Gary stuff. I love that. It is one of my favorite moments, if not my favorite moment in the show. I adore anything to do with Gary's backstory, and him getting to meet John again, and John sacrificing himself for Gary. Heart-wrenching. Absolutely amazing. Easily S tier. Yes, I'm putting it above Chapter 6. Probably gonna piss some people off with that, but I don't think Chapter 6 is the best episode. I think it's very good, but there's definitely some that top it. Chapter 9. So Chapter 9 has a problem that's pretty significant, but other than that, I love the episode. So the problem is that Quinary? What? That's the problem. It's just, why is Quinary happening? What led to this? Why is this a thing? I don't know. The Quinary relationship in season 1 was not built very good, or it wasn't paced very good. I have a very high tolerance for this, though, so it's not like it ruined the episode for me, and I thought all the dating stuff was very cute, but I didn't drink, sorry. Sexy water drinking ASMR. I think all of the dating stuff is very cute. I think this episode is very intense in all the right ways. And single-handedly, what really does this episode for me is when Gary and Quinn are floating to space and they're kind of hugging each other, everything's falling apart. Earth's getting sucked into, I don't remember what it's called now, the final space rift. And, what's the song that's playing? It's, y'all know the song. It's Shall Be Merry, I think. Yeah, it's Shall Be Merry, because Enter One is the only song from the soundtrack I really know that isn't Shall Be Merry. So, When the Night is Long is playing, and It's just fabulous. So, because of that moment alone, A tier. I think because of the way the Quinary romance is, it doesn't quite top chapter 4 for me, but it's fantastic. Chapter 10 blew my goddamn mind too, though. Let me tell you, if Final Space had been a flop somehow and we hadn't gotten to season 2, this would have fucked me up. God, imagine we never got to season 2 and it just ends with Gary floating in space. I think that was so ballsy. Everything looped together super well. I kind of wish this episode was a little bit longer because the pacing was a little bit fucked, but like, I would have been okay with this episode being a little bit slower paced because it was very balls to the walls. The Hugh and Gary interactions make this episode for me, though, above anything else. I have said this already, but he was my favorite character in season 1. He's at his peak in chapter 10, and I don't know, everything about this episode works perfectly. Gary staggering, injured, saying that if we're going out big. Fabulous. Basically everybody dying or going missing. Super ballsy. I love chapter 10, and even though it's not my favorite episode, I think chapter 8 still beats it out. This show really doesn't hit the heights that it does in chapter 10 again, all through season 2, or in any moment prior in season 1. This is when the show was at its most intense for me. It was fabulous. Man, I really hope season 3 gives us more chapter 10 moments. That is my biggest hope for season 3, is that we get more chapter 10. So now we're on to season 2. And I guess I will just level with this. I like season 1 better. I like season 1's narrative through line. I think the character development through the entire thing is really solid. There's some rocky, weird moments. I think that, honestly, the season needed to be a little bit longer, and the Quinary romance was funky. But when season 1 was on top of its narrative through line, that was when it was at its best. Season 2 is a lot more episodic. There's a lot more network involvement, so it just doesn't work as well. But that doesn't mean I don't like season 2, and it doesn't mean I hate every episode. So, that said, the Toru Regatta is not as good as chapter 1 in terms of beginning the season. We immediately started with character introductions that I didn't give a shit about, and I still do not give a shit about through the entire season. Kind of a hot take. I know a lot of people really like Fox, Ash, and Ava. I don't. Ash is okay at least, but nobody else got enough development for me to really care. So the Toru Regatta was smashing more people into our core cast. It basically was the episode that fucked Hugh over for the rest of the season, which bums me out. It's a fine episode otherwise. Like, I think Gary racing around in the ship is really fun. Gary has some fun interactions with the Ash in this episode. Little Kato is pretty much at his peak in the entirety of season 2. This is a very Little Kato centric season, and I'm fine with that. He really shines. But I don't know. This episode has problems as well. I'm so disappointed coming off of chapter 10 and then immediately jumping into the Toru Regatta. So I wouldn't say it's D tier, mostly for the racing segments and Hugh and Gary's interactions at the beginning. But it's definitely C tier. I think you can probably consider chapter 3 and the Toru Regatta pretty interchangeable because I'm pretty lukewarm on both of them. Chapter 5 is definitely better than both of them, though. The Happy Place. Candy, I know Candy really hates this episode. I don't hate it, but it is the straightest episode in this entire show, and I can't not think about that now. Every time somebody says they had a crush on Happy Place Gary, I'm like, you are so straight. It's it sure is an episode. I didn't hate it. I think it's okay. But would I really go back to watch that over like anything else? Actually, I'll tell you what. The one thing in this episode that's really solid is the ending, because it's Gary sort of just reminiscing on, they fucked up. They didn't save the Earth. I think that had really good potential. And I think the fact that everybody came together and was like, yeah, we're a team squad. Like, I think that was really well handled. The problem is, and actually, now that I'm thinking about it, this is the thing that pissed me off about the episode the most, and I think this might have just strung it into detail. They don't do anything with that. They set it up, and then they resolve it in the same episode. That's a problem in season 3. That's a problem in season 2 on the whole. And I think part of that's just because it has the episodic problem, but they literally set up that plot point and then don't do anything with it. Todd gets set up, but Todd's kind of a really obnoxious. I think Todd would have been an okay villain if this plot point hadn't gotten dropped. But actually, yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't hate it as much as Chapter 2, but I don't like this episode at all. And then there is the Grand Surrender. This episode has a good concept and poor execution. That's the best way I think to describe this episode. I do think this episode did make me stop hating Ash, because in The Happy Place and Tora Regatta, she was obnoxious. I didn't get a chance to mention this because it's pretty low-key, but Ash feels like a 14-year-old scene girl being edgy, like ridiculously edgy, especially in The Happy Place with Little Kato. It's frustrating. And it's not a vibe. Also, holy shit, hang on. The Happy Place was the piss episode, wasn't it? The Happy Place was the piss episode. It's going below Chapter 2. I forgot about it. I forgot it was the piss war episode. Sorry, back on the Grand Surrender. I'm so mad at myself. I mentioned that. I didn't even mention the piss. The piss. Unless I'm wrong, it was the Happy Place, right? Yeah, it was the Happy Place because, there was that line. The one really funny line in the episode was like, oh great, we're getting sucked in, and I smell like piss. I thought that was really funny. So yeah, the Happy Place actually gets to be at the bottom for now because of that piss war alone. So, then the Grand Surrender. Good at concept, poor execution. So it made me stop hating Ash, but the pacing in this episode is so fucked. Like, I don't know, Kevin being essentially the main hero here is infuriating. It didn't really feel very Ash-centric, like, when it came down to it. The Ash and Little Kato moment at the end is really nice. They give me very good sibling energy. Actually, so do Little Kato and Fox, for that matter. But, I mean, this episode is just very poor in every, like, it's not handled well. It's mostly a problem with the pacing. But, yeah, I don't know. This episode doesn't click. So, I'm gonna call it low C tier. We're really getting off to a good start with Chapter 2, but luckily, the other side has us covered. Yeah, so the other side, it is a fabulous episode, but there's no buts. It's just a really fabulous episode. It starts off with everybody dancing the Footloose, which is one of my favorite scenes in the entire show. Very fun. I actually did roll my eyes the first time I saw it, but then the more I watched it, the more I was like, I really like this. It's very cute. I think it's probably because the first time I saw it, I hadn't even been through chapter 1 all the way, or season 1 all the way. And by the time I hit season 2, that scene hit differently for whatever reason. Probably because I was just a little bit more attached to the characters. And then, I mean, you don't need to tell me about the Little Kato scene. Everybody loves the Little Kato, or not the scene, like the whole episode. Everybody loves the Little Kato stuff. That poor kid is traumatized to hell. It's also really funky because he's like technically, what is he, 64 now? But it's sort of a situation where, do you really age and mature if you're just alone by yourself for 50 years? I don't know. It really fucks. Little Kato's all fucked up now. This was an episode they had squeezed past the network, essentially. Apparently in this episode, the network really did not like this episode, but it's fabulous. I'm actually gonna put it... Wait, I meant to put it up one. There it goes. I don't personally like it as much as Chapter 8, and I do not think it hits the same heights as Chapter 10, but I do think it beats Chapter 6 out. They're all very excellent episodes, though, like the peak of Final Space for certain. I just think that I think that it beats out Chapter 6 because the entire package as a whole is better than Chapter 6's was, but it doesn't hit the same heights as Chapter 10, and Chapter 8 is as high as it is purely for personal choice. Sorry. Speaking of personal choice, though, the Notorious Mrs. Goodspeed. Oh my god. This is an episode that people are going to disagree with me on pretty hard, probably, but I love Cheryl. Like, to be absolutely clear, she's a garbage human being, with pretty garbage motives, but she's a dumpster fire that is really charismatic and it's just super fun on screen all the time. I love it when she's on screen. And because I love her when she's on screen, this is the Cheryl episode. It's really fun being the end because of Cheryl. And the ending to this episode is maybe my favorite moment in season 2. I don't know. It's up there with The Other Side and like the Footloose scene. It's one of my favorites. I made an entire video about it. I love Teen Gary a lot. So because of the ending alone, I think it's probably a low A tier for me, and also because I love Cheryl, but I will totally admit that is almost exclusively due to personal choice, and also, Cheryl is kind of garbage, and, I mean, the rest of the episode's not fantastic. I just really like Cheryl, and I really like the ending. Arachnotext is actually an episode I think I like more than a lot of people. It's very visceral, Gary exasperation through the entire thing, and I think that the mooncake moment at the end is super cute and very satisfying. I do think this episode... This is the episode with my least favorite joke in this entire show, even more so than the pitch joke. Once again, it's kind of a personal preference thing. It just fell really flat. That, like, mole rat that kept saying sup, and the joke got stretched on. I was so annoyed. It's not a funny joke to me. So, I like this episode a lot more than other people, I think. Oh shit, wait. Tribor... Actually, mid-C tier, actually just because of the Tribor stuff, because I thought it was really unfunny, and once again, I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, but it's just really unfunny. I don't like that. I don't like the specific joke that the Tribor, episode, like, the Tribor part of the episode was telling. Basically, what did this episode for me was the beginning and the end, and the beginning and the end. The Gary stuff and then the ending. Anything with the Arachnotext I think was really fun. But because of Tribor and because the middle of the episode's pretty I have to put it in C, I think. The first times they met, I really like this episode. It's Nightfall, it's Gary, that's it. I'm sorry, I was reading the chapter 7 thing, I was like, I did not put chapter 2 there on accident. I don't like chapter 2. Nope, it definitely says 7, I just can't read. The first times they met, I don't know, I just think it's really cute. I think the subplot, this might be one of the few times in season 2 that I think the subplot and the main plot were both fairly okay. Season 2 in particular has a problem in which the subplots, at least for me, don't work. It's what drags down the Arachnotex episode. It drags down episodes to come. I don't think we've gotten to any other ones yet that have the subplot that just really doesn't work, but the first times they met is a fairly... Because of Little Kato and Fox, it works better, and it does not at least drag down the episode. But the Nightfall and Gary stuff is where this really shines. I think it's really nice that we finally get to see Gary's backstory. We have an example of a healthy Cornerian relationship, finally. And, I don't know, and all of the Nightfall stuff is just really heart-wrenching. So, with that in mind, do I think it's better than Chapter 7? I think it's better than Chapter 7, but I think I like Notorious Mrs. Goodspeed better. So I think it's going to go at high B tier. Oh boy, these are the episodes I'm going to piss some people off about. The Remembered and the Closer You Get. These are the episodes with the Avocado revival. If you talk to me about Avocado for more than 2 seconds, you know that I really liked Avocado in season 1. He was my favorite character when he was alive initially. And that was before Hugh hit his stride, for the record, but I really liked Avocado. I hated that he came back a lot. I think he should have stayed dead. I think that the development, it kind of cheapens all of the development that the characters have gone through before. It kind of fucks with the stakes a little bit. I don't know. I did not vibe either of these much at all. But what I will say is that I think if you take out that element, I think that they are solid episodes. The Remembered. And this was a nice loop around with Gary's character with Little Kato, and like you can see how much he's grown since Chapter 2, which thank God. But like, we got to see War General Avocado, that was pretty cool, but like, because of the trope that it is, I don't like this episode purely because of what it stands for. That is it. I don't like this episode because of what it stands for. I wouldn't say I have the same kind of, I absolutely do not want to fucking watch it as Chapter 2, and it's not as, like, oof as The Happy Place, like, with the piss jokes, so I don't think I can put it in D tier, but actually, you know what? This is not reflective of the episode quality itself, but purely because of what it stands for and what it did for the show, I'm putting it in D tier. I'm sorry. The Closer You Get did not have that sense of incredible disappointment in the show when I watched it, because that was the episode prior, so I can judge it a little bit more on its own merits without my own biases coming into play. And I actually really like this episode. I'm trying to remember, was there a subplot? If there was a subplot, I can't remember it, but the stuff with Gary diving into the water and meeting Invictus for the first time, and we see Quinn and we see the Gary corpses, that was stunning. Basically, the entire, probably last half of this episode, like what I can remember of it, absolutely beautiful. I think Avocado getting possessed by Invictus is a really nice... I don't like that he got brought back, but That was cool. The Locato stuff just further traumatizing the kid. I think it was all very well handled. I cannot remember the beginning of this episode. I do not remember what happens before Gary dives in the water. Who tells him to dive in the water? I don't even remember who tells him to dive in the water. So, I think because I cannot remember part of it, I can't, in good conscience, put it above B tier, but I think it probably, because what I remember I really loved, it gets to be above Chapter 7. Lost Spy. Fun fact, this is the episode I'm doing in Into Final Space, so watch that. I want to love this episode, but I don't. And it's because of Clarence. Fuck Clarence. In this episode in particular, fuck Clarence, fuck that subplot. It quite literally ruins this episode. And I know it was because of, network interference. Like, it's not really the staff's fault, but it's infuriating, and I felt like the episode that little Kato is adopted by Gary should have had a lot more oomph than it did. And it didn't. Because this was Clarence's subplot. Where does this go? I don't want to put it in D tier because of the little Kato stuff. It is easily my most conflicted episode. Because, okay, here's the thing. When I watch this episode now, I have to skip through about half of it. I do not have any desire to watch the Clarence stuff. And I actually do think this might be the only episode that I actively skip through, because I just don't want to watch it. So actually, I think I have to put this below Happy Place, because I don't actually even skip through the piss joke, I just deal with it. I cannot watch The Lost Spy without skipping through it. And that is shame, because the Gary Little Kato stuff is fabulous, and Little Kato getting adopted, I am a huge Dad supporter, so I should have loved this episode. But because I have to skip through 50% of it, it goes at the bottom. The setup is one of the only other episodes with a subplot I actually kind of liked. I actually might have liked the subplot more than I liked the actual plot. That's because it's Clarence focused, and after watching The Lost Spy, I wanted absolutely nothing to do with Clarence. And it's just Clarence being a simp. That is the plot. That is the episode. It's Clarence being a simp for Cheryl. Who's already a simp. It's a simp trail. It's such a mess, but I think Cheryl is really good in this episode, actually, though. Now that I'm thinking about it, she's kind of a huge hypocrite, but, that's fine. I love Cheryl. If you couldn't tell already, maybe I'm the Cheryl simp. I'm not the Cheryl simp. If she was a real person, I'd want to punch her in the face. But as a fictional person, she resides in the same spirit as Vriska, as do not recommend you do anything she ever does, but I love her anyways. Really fun dad speed moments. We actually got some Air Mom on top of it. Like I said, I like the subplot because I like Hugh a lot and I like Mooncake a lot. That was the subplot, is Hugh and Mooncake. I actually don't even really think the subplot was probably that good. I just like Hugh and Mooncake a lot. So, it's an okay episode. I think we might have another B tier contender. Yeah, I'm thinking I'd probably rather watch the setup than Chapter 1, but maybe not as much as Chapter 7. So we get that. I will say this is actually a lot more even than I thought it would be, but there's definitely a lot of Season 2 towards the bottom. Well, we got 2 more to go. Descent in the Darkness and The Sixth Key. What happened in Descent in the Darkness? What is Descent in the Darkness? Oh, this is the episode Gary confronts Cheryl, which is so goddamn satisfying. Um, Basically, Gary spends this entire season emotionally constipated about Cheryl, and it's beautiful, and this was the really nice resolution to it. Um, he Hugh has moments in this episode, but the problem is that he shares those moments with Ava, who I don't like. Sorry, Ava Stans. I know there's at least one of you watching. Um, I don't like Ava, and I don't like the Ava Hugh thing. I thought it was really obnoxious, and it really felt like, oh, we got a boy robot and a girl robot, let's shove them together, because we cannot have a boy and a girl who don't want to fuck. Very, very not great. So, and I know, like, Loveland said it's, like, Hugh and, or it's, like, Molly and, isn't the robot's name Ava in that, too? It's Wally and Ava to her, but, I don't see it. Wally and Ava work because they don't talk. Ava's just kind of obnoxious. So, Hugh and Ava kind of drag it down. But Gary and Cheryl, fabulous. It's either a high B, low A. I'm not sure. Which I know sounds silly because I was just talking smack, but the Gary and Cheryl moments are probably what I would show somebody who is reluctant to get in the final space because they think it's just for kids. Because it's not incredibly spoilery, like it's not like Avocado's death, but it's still pretty intense. I think for Cheryl, I'm gonna put it at low A. Definitely not as good as Notorious Miss Goodspeed, but honestly, I don't know if either of those two should be an A tier. They just are because I love Gary backstory. And there's the sixth key, which is the finale of season 2. Can already tell you it was not as good as the season 1 finale. Nightfall sacrificing herself was good, but it was always going to happen the second that character was introduced. You're not going to have Quinn and Nightfall in the same sphere, and it was pretty obvious they were going to rescue Quinn by season 3, so, or at least be in final space with Quinn. Like, there was no way that wasn't going to happen. So Nightfall dying wasn't a huge shock. Avocado has some nice moments in this episode. I actually did really like when he snapped out and he and Gary finally reunite and remember each other. As pissed off as the Avocado resurrection made me, I thought that was really nice. Ash can apparently spank Invictus. Bolo gets freed. That makes me happy. Bolo has some good lines in this. Yeah, I don't know. It's an okay finale. Cheryl gets kind of redeemed, which I'm holding judgment off until season 3. Because I think it's all going to depend on how they handle in season 3. Because I can excuse anything that's a little bit iffy about Cheryl's redemption in this episode just because they were in the heat of the moment and you're not going to say no to the bitch who's going to pilot to save your life. Like, the Cheryl vaguely redemption stuff gets a pass as long as she's not fully redeemed by the time season 3 starts. Yes, I like Cheryl, but she is redemption equals death levels of, like, horrible human being. She neglected her son for 30 years, tried to murder him and all of his friends, was working for the villain Titan. Admittedly, she was kind of strung along, but point is, she's redemption equals death, and I don't want anybody that acts like that otherwise. So, I can excuse that, and I thought that the Cheryl Gary moment was really nice, considering, I did think the Tribor Hugh, Fox stuff with, Cheryl, I like Cheryl. But also, the Bolo, Avocado, and Invictus stuff was really well handled. It was really fabulous getting to go in the final space for the first time. Probably one of the only moments in season 2 I rewatched a whole bunch was them breaking in the final space because it's very awe-inspiring. So, this is a good episode. But I would not... It's nowhere near as good as Chapter 10. So where would I put it? Where did I put the last one? It's very spectacular, and I think because of that, it will go in A tier. I think I'm gonna put it above Notorious Mrs. Goodspeed. It's not as beautiful as Chapter 4 or Chapter 9, certainly, so I can't put it above them. But considering the Notorious Mrs. Goodspeed and Descent into Darkness are on this list, or as high as they are, purely due to personal preference, and I think the 6 he does what they do even better. I have to really put it up here for the spectacle. So yeah, here's my list. I'm sure at least several of you want to maul me. You have my DMs. Better you sending me death threats than a minor, so please don't send me death threats though. But yeah, there's my list.